We spoke to a lot of customers. And what we heard back over and over and over again is the market was looking for a full solution, right? They hate the fact that they work with company battery X and inverter company X and optimizer company X, right? Because when things go wrong, everyone starts pointing fingers to the other and no one wants to kind of solve that solution, right? And this is what made our decision. So we went away from maybe some of the previous news that we were a universal battery that could work with any inverter system. And we're actually now launching our own inverter system that's designed to work interchangeably with both a solar module as well as our flagship storage product.
The Solar Podcast is brought to you by Continental Energy Solutions. I'm your host, Tim Montague. Check us out at cesnrg.com. Today on the Solar Podcast, rooftop storage. You heard me right. Yotta Energy is making a storage unit for rooftop solar. My guest today is the CEO of Yotta Energy, Omeed Badkoobeh. Welcome to the show, Omeed.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Really excited to have you on the show. Solar and storage is a perfect pairing, and so it's just wonderful to see storage getting traction now. We're doing a lot of commercial industrial storage here in Illinois. The lion's share of it, though, is going to California and Massachusetts, where they have specific incentives for storage. But give us a little background about yourself, Omeed. You've been in the energy industry quite a while with some very well-known companies. So tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to start Yotta Energy.
Sure. Thanks, Tim. Yes, I got into solar back in around 2008, 2009 timeframe. Very early days. Remember the sharp triangular solar modules? Those were popular back then. And SunTech 175 watts were like the hit of the town. And just worked my way up from there. Early on, I worked in a region that greatly valued backup power. So I was installing a lot of battery-based systems with Outback and Schneider or Xantrax equipment. And I got front-hand a lot of experience developing those kinds of systems and really understanding the pain points around how to integrate more batteries, right? How I got into the industry, I actually studied global diplomacy and international studies, but then I spent some time finishing credits in California. I know you mentioned, Tim, that you also were in California, and I experienced some homes that were off-grid powered, and something clicked inside of me, and I was like, you know what? I don't think I want to work in the State Department. I'd rather do this up-and-coming technology. And I just jumped in. I went into every training, every trade show, every type of certification I could get early on back then. Way back then, there was no such thing as a professional solar engineering degree. You just kind of learned. There was that one book that taught you how to do string sizing and so forth, and just worked my way up in the industry. So I've been in many facets of it. I've worked for both a developer, I've worked on the equipment side, I've worked in every facet of project management. And it's kind of all the background that got me to where I am today and why I started Yotta.
Good deal. Well, tell us more about Yotta Energy and why Yotta. A Yotta is 10 to the 24th. But what is the point that you're making by using the name Yotta?
Sure. So we formed the company. We were thinking of all the different kinds of creative names, and Yotta just really stuck out because we found a calculation where the Earth receives approximately a Yotta joule of energy from the sun annually, and it's enough to have 15 minutes of that captured to power all of humanity, right? So Yotta is 10 to the 24th degree. When we thought about names of the company, we thought we wanted something that really had deep meaning with what we're trying to accomplish. And the Earth receives approximately a Yotta joule of energy, which is a large number, from the sun annually. And I think solar has come a long ways to allowing us to generate that energy. The next frontier is how do we store it? And how do we use it as a commonplace power source against fossil fuel generation? So that's where Yotta came from.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, storage is where it's at. Let's face it. We're swimming in energy. We get 10,000 times more sunlight than we can utilize on an annual basis. And so if we just store a small amount of that, like you indicated, we're really set. And we need short-term and long-term storage. It's a both and.
Right.
And so lithium ion is where it's at for short-term storage. So let's get into it. What are you guys doing at Yotta Energy? What's the product and what's the play?
Sure. So we like to think that we're revolutionizing the solar plus storage space by fundamentally making it simpler, right? Um, we've come a long ways in the technology frontier and the price point for lithium batteries or energy storage. The next frontier is how do we make it very simple and easy to integrate, which is can be as costly as the equipment itself in some cases, right? So our major product is called the Solar Leaf. I have one here to show you. So it's the first of its kind energy storage device that is designed to integrate directly behind a solar module that you see in the background over there, right? So what's very unique here is that we're essentially taking storage and we are attempting to make it a part of the solar array, and as well as a part of the installation of solar itself, right? Instead of having batteries in one big shipping container that has to be forced around the building, most of these buildings have ample rooftop space for solar, and then they're adding weight anyway on the rooftops for ballast weighting, right? Why not integrate that with a battery device and then also solve some of the other challenges that they may face? So Yotta is essentially a distributed architecture for solar and storage, and we're launching a full, complete solution for the marketplace.
Good. And we have some exciting news. You're going to announce a new product today as well. But just to give our listeners a little background, if you work in rooftop solar, you know that a typical installation is ballasted with concrete ballast blocks. It could be attached, partially attached as well, but ballasting is a very common practice, and ballast works. It's just if you can make the ballast from something valuable like a battery, and there Omeed is showing us this relative scale of the battery. It's about 25 inches long, 16 inches wide. And so it sits nicely under the panel. You have a partnership I've noted with Panel Claw, which is one of our favorite racking companies, the Claw FR. They are the leader for flat roof racking. And um, so what are the markets though that you're going after with this product?
Yeah, so right now we sell into all of the U.S. market, but as you noted, there are key markets that are going to be the first movers for storage, and those are California, Massachusetts, Nevada, for example, has a good incentive for energy storage, and so those are the first key markets. But there are applications for storage today that pencil out in all markets, I would say. It's just there's never been a product like ours that can fit fractionally into a solar PV array, right? And so part of the problem in the past with getting storage to pencil out is it only made sense if you went big, right? All of the auxiliary cost of putting together trenching and foundation pad and the permitting and all of these things, it only really made sense and penciled out if you had a really big size project, right? But with our format and it being able to get permitted and designed and installed by the same crew that's doing solar, you now can do a very fractional approach to how you deploy storage.
And you're there in Austin, Texas, which is now world famous for the grid debacle that hit Texas back in February. um, and solar and storage would help that circumstance tremendously, both from a grid resiliency and then the resiliency of local individual buildings. But you know I like to say everybody wants a battery until they see the price tag and how it pencils. And it's a double edge because on the one hand, storage is expensive, solar is expensive too. On the other hand, when it pencils, solar and storage is a killer app. It's a killer combination that can generate unparalleled ROI, several times greater than the ROI of solar alone.
Correct.
And so that's where it really makes sense, and that's what those are the opportunities that we're looking for. It's about 1 in 10 in PJM of our commercial customers that we can actually make a good pitch for solar and storage.
Right.
The unit that you have created though is a 1 kilowatt hour battery, is that right?
Yes, correct. So to use it, we were advertising 100% depth of discharge on a full kilowatt hour capacity.
Okay. And immediately, as a solar installer, we think, okay, this is a little weird because you're putting a battery on a roof in extreme temperatures, and batteries do not like extreme temperatures. They like room temperature. Basically, they want to be at 73 degrees,
Right.
24/7 if they could be.
Right.
But
Right.
how do you tackle that problem without using all of the energy from the solar array to condition the batteries?
Yeah. Great question. So that same question everyone had when module level power electronics first surfaced as well. Well, does it make sense to put an inverter on the rooftop, or does it make sense to put an optimizer, right? And we've kind of proven that wrong and said, look, the feature and the values that it brings does make it make sense. In fact, the safety or all of the ease of design, right? The same
Yeah.
thing applies to us. Yes, putting a battery on a rooftop sounds crazy on the surface, but that's our core IP. We've developed a very novel thermal management process. And even if you put a battery up next to the building or you put it inside of a shipping container, you still need a thermal management system, right? Yotta's system, what you see here, is a proprietary system that uses ceramic, a phase change material, and it works completely passively. And that might be hard to believe for some folks, but it actually works 100% passively, meaning that we don't consume any of the battery's power to keep the battery cool. And we do this by basically keeping the battery between 50 degrees Fahrenheit and about 104 Fahrenheit. Now, in extremely cold climates, there is an active component built into each product that will kick on and protect the product from getting below that freezing point, right? So the projects here in Texas during the freeze that you mentioned, all of them were operating during the entirety of that storm. And all of those batteries maintain 50 degrees or above in Fahrenheit.
Yeah, I have lithium iron phosphate batteries in my RV, so I've gotten to know about small scale storage. I've patched together a 5 kilowatt hour system using Lion Energy storage batteries. And they don't like to charge below 32 degrees Fahrenheit,
So
period.
you're damaging them if you charge them below freezing,
Yeah.
right?
And so in the winter, that's not easy.
Right.
But so we're putting rooftop solar up there now, pairing it with Yotta energy storage. You could do one battery to one module theoretically, right?
Yep.
Um, and you play well with existing string inverters, micro inverters. What are the constraints from a developer's perspective on when the product will work or what technologies it works with?
Sure. So that's a good segue to the item that I told you I was going to unveil here. During our development of this product, we looked deep and hard, and we spoke to a lot of customers. And what we heard back over and over and over again is the market was looking for a full solution, right? They hate the fact that they work with company battery X and inverter company X and optimizer company X, right? Because when things go wrong, everyone starts pointing fingers to the other, and no one wants to kind of solve that solution, right? And this is what made our decision. So we went away from maybe some of the previous news that we were a universal battery that could work with any inverter system. And we're actually now launching our own inverter system that's designed to work interchangeably with both a solar module as well as our flagship storage product, right? And so I actually have one here to show to you. This is the Yotta dual power inverter, and it's designed to mount directly on the ballast racking. It's the first of its kind inverter that's specifically catered to commercial C&I ballast racking and designed to allow inputs to work with both the solar leaf storage product as well as the PV module. Meaning that, you might have a customer that only wants solar today. You can go ahead and install this on the entire array and come back at any point and add storage incrementally to that project when it makes more sense, right? And not only does this solve the inversion, the power conversion from the storage, but it also solves for rapid shutdown. So now you're not dealing with high voltage DC. You're not dealing with a separate rapid shutdown device. You have everything as a solution from Yotta for both storage and solar to grid.
Okay, wonderful. I'm now very curious. Can you give us some specs on the inverter?
Sure. So the inverter can output close to 1,200 watts. We're about to launch it live when we revamp the website. So it does 1200 watt output. It works both in 208 single phase and 3-phase configuration, as well as 240. And it's designed to work interchangeably with both the output of our solar leaf product as well as a module. It can automatically detect what it's connected to, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it can also work in 480 situations with a step-up transformer, right? So we can do 480 applications, but we'd have to also work in the design of a step-up transformer. And you know, if you're coming from this is an analogy that we like to kind of talk about. Module level power electronics weren't always commonplace in CNI, right, on rooftops, but now they're becoming more and more standard because of requirements. And it really begs the question of, well, does it make sense to have a string inverter and have the potential failure points of all these different optimizers? Or does it actually make sense to have it all in one? And we actually have smaller amounts of failure points because we have less devices on the rooftop, right?
So you will be promoting the inverter as a standalone string inverter. You know, it's a one inverter to a small string of modules, right?
So let me clarify. It's one inverter today. It's one inverter to every 4 modules, right?
Yeah. Okay.
And so you can do up to 12 per branch circuit. We are in development of some being able to go up to 24 per branch circuit. But today, as if you were designing a project today, it's 1 per 4 modules, and you can do all the way up to about 460 watt modules into that input.
Okay. And then you can attach how many storage units to one inverter?
So basically 4 storage units per inverter, right? So you can come back and install 1 per every 4 modules, and then come back and do up to 4 per that inverter, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in a lot of cases, because the entire electrical system is already designed, there's no changes to that, right? When you come back and add the solar leaf, all you're adding is an additional gateway and then adding the storage units, right?
Yeah.
So it's really simple. And then I don't know if you're familiar with the panel qual FR system, right? Which I'll demonstrate that again. But you actually, it's designed, it's almost like, you know, panel qual is already in development of this product before we partner together, but it's almost like they couldn't have designed a better racking system for our solution, because you don't need any tools to come back and lift up the module and remove 2 ballast blocks and it's essentially add storage to that project, right? Yep. And going with this distributed inverter architecture, and I don't know if I said it, the product's name is dual power inverter. It really enables the integration to happen at any point, right? So you might have a customer and they may not want to foot the bill for a large storage project, but if you go to them and say, hey, you can add 30 kilowatt hours of Yotta's storage solution to your project, try it out, see how it changes your demand profile for your building, right? In the future, you come back and add additional EV chargers. Guess what? You can come back and add more storage. And you as the developer don't have to send a full construction crew out there. You send 1 or 2 guys with some more devices, right?
Mm-hmm. What is the reception you're getting from installers and AHJs, which is a super important consideration for any storage device, ground mounted or roof mounted, right? The AHJs may or may not have seen batteries, period.
Yeah.
How are they responding?
That's a good question, because we are in somewhat of a gray area here, right? We're pioneering something that's never been really done before. No one's put storage essentially behind a PV grid-tied inverter, right? You usually do it with a hybrid inverter or a multi-mode inverter. And by doing that, we're technically utilizing the same inverter spec, the inverters UL certified, designed to tie into the grid. It's Rule 21 certified, right? So a lot of the HJs that we have spoken to, they've looked at it and they said, well, there's nothing in here that prohibits us from permitting it, you know, the same way we would a solar PV project, right? Which is huge, because right now when you do solar and storage, you kind of have to deal with 2 separate projects and you have to worry about 2 separate interconnects, right? Now, when it comes to safety, we are very much on track on getting all the required safety certifications and really proving out that this is the safest way actually to deploy solar storage on rooftops. So we use a very safe lithium iron phosphate battery that's been proven not to have thermal runaway. The product's going to go through the 9540A certification, and it's also going to have the UL 9540A testing, which is basically a flame test to prove that this product can't cause fire or cause any fire issues, right? And so we're very confident that once we get that familiarity with some of the developers in the AHJs, every time a project comes up that has our solution, they'll say, look, we understand the technology, right? In some markets today, you have to spend quite an amount of capital just to go through that permitting process. And we're hoping that our solution basically solves against that.
Yeah, and then there's interconnection with the utility also.
Yeah. You asked a question. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
What feedback are you getting from the utilities?
Well, that's the point, is that it's a gray area, right? They can't really, they can't treat us the way they do other storage systems because we are sitting behind a solar PV inverter, right? So we're inherently DC, and all we're doing is controlling the output of that solar module, right? And so that's it. There are some things that as we get into more and more markets, we'll be able to answer that question more deeply. But right now, we just kind of fit into this realm of saying, look, it can get permitted in the same way that solar can get permitted theoretically. Right?
Mm-hmm. Okay. The other quite complex factor with solar and storage is the control system, and bringing it all together. Are you offering a full 360 wraparound device
Yeah.
and services, or are there other integrations necessary?
Sure, that's a great question, Tim. So inherent in the product offering and the Yotta gateway, there are some basic functionalities of the storage, right? As an installer, you'll see a dashboard that can show you each unit, individual unit, or you can design it to say, I just want to see the total amount of available power, right? We are built in enabling load shifting and time of use shifting, and some basic demand charge reduction capabilities. At the beginning, when we launched the product, the storage product, we're going to partner with established EMS players. So think of like Energy Toolbase and some other controllers that are on the market, right? And that's our strategy. So we're not looking to reinvent the wheel there. If you want to turn this into a virtual power plant and have it be market facing, then we would partner with an established EMS controller.
Yeah, it seems like virtual power plants are getting a lot of traction now, and we need additional legislation to incentivize them. But in theory, they are truly an amazing opportunity, so to speak, for grid resiliency and for ride through under storm conditions.
Correct.
But so you're saying though that your solution is pretty plug and play.
Everyone uses the term plug and play. As you know, I think ours is truly plug and play. In fact, I could demonstrate, we actually did a demonstration where live, we took away 2 ballast blocks and added the solar leaf unit. You're simply adding storage is as simple as disconnecting the MC4 between the PV module and the inverter and inserting the storage unit, and then going back to the gateway and auto-populating the fact that storage is there, right? It's really that simple.
Yeah.
And that's where it's profound, right? A lot of people are still early on into thinking how storage gets deployed. In fact, a lot of developers don't have a lot of experience yet developing storage, right? Haven't gone through a lot of the pain points. But some of the strongest feedback we get from early customers is, wow, this is going to solve a lot of their issues on deploying storage. We had a customer who was putting a stationary battery system, and during the trenching process, they knocked out the water line for the entire complex next to them. And now they're under litigation for that, right? Imagine being able to install storage and never having to deal with any of that. It's all on the rooftop.
Yeah, there are pros and cons to roof mounting anything. The age of the roof is the number one deal killer in C&I solar. I'm curious what my customers will have to say about putting batteries on their roof. It's already sometimes challenging to put solar on a roof.
Right.
There have been some events, rooftop fires in the news, and so that that hurts. But The other thing that's on my mind about this, Omeed, and I'm very excited to sink our teeth into this solution and see how it pencils compared to other solutions, right?
Mhm.
We've been working a lot with Tesla. Now we're starting to work with Jinko, and um, we do. You know, we have a unique value stack in PJM. We're attacking capacity charges.
Mhm.
We're doing frequency regulation. So it is a little bit of rocket science.
Right.
Um,
It is very
but
complex.
so
Yeah.
what about battery supply chains? Do they concern you? Because they concern me.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll certainly, and I'll speak to that. I want to address something that you said earlier. So the important thing to know is we're not adding anything new to what's already going to be deployed on the rooftop, right? There is not any new penetration. In fact, we remove attachments. We remove having to attach an inverter, right? Because that's all in the rack. And we're not adding any new weight. We're just supplementing the weight that the concrete ballast uses, right? So the main thing to us to prove out is the safety of our battery system, which we feel very safe, but we're out to prove it even further, right? That's what makes us very unique. And then the point that you added about the fires, well, if you really start to research the reason of the fires, it all happened because of high voltage and mismatching connectors, right? And you would never have that with our solution because you never exceed high voltages anyway. We never exceed 80 volts DC in the entire array, right? And so we feel like we reduce a lot of that risk of having high voltage events on a rooftop that we completely eliminate. Um, Now, your question about batteries, yes. If you asked me that question 2 years ago, I would say, yeah, there's no problem. LFP is in its own boat. No one's using it except for energy storage, and I'm not worried about it because electric vehicle companies aren't really looking at LFP today. They are.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a lot of the EV companies are also trying to make their products safer. I don't know if you saw the news that Kia is recalling so many of the Konas and Chevys are calling the Bolts. And
Yep.
that's really a difference between NMC and LFP technologies, right? But I think what it's going to do is actually drive down the cost much more quickly and bring up the supply chains for lithium iron phosphate. So we're actually very excited about the fact that a lot of electric vehicle companies are looking at LFP technology, right?
Yeah, I think Tesla themselves in China are using LFP now, are they not?
They are, and I wouldn't be surprised if they start bringing that to other markets as well, right? Especially
Yeah.
with the larger format cell, you now can get enough specific energy out of LFP, where in the past you may not have considered it. And then we talked about temperature. LFP in its by itself is inherently more tolerant for temperature swings. It can actually, there are some good technologies that can work and charge below freezing point.
Okay. Well, what else should our listeners know? And you had also mentioned a manufacturing partnership. Can you speak to that?
Sure, we can speak to that. It's public news now. We've cemented a partnership with Flex for producing the solar leaf, and we feel very confident with that, given Flex's history of producing these types of products, module level power electronics, right? And you know, we've sold out basically all of our production now for 2021, but we are actively seeking developers that are willing to try the solution for 2022 projects. Um, and the inverter system is launching officially in April next month, and it'll be ready to fit into projects. So if you're interested in this format and you think you have customers out there that like the idea of maybe starting small with storage and then expanding over time, this is the perfect solution. Right? And Tim, I didn't mention, we're actually very price competitive against string inverters plus rapid shutdown, right? That's the other unique thing here.
Mm-hmm.
That's been a barrier for why you would never have considered a quad micro, in a commercial space, is cost. We also have broken that barrier. So we're very confident that we can price compete against having to have a string inverter plus a separate rapid shutdown device.
Mm-hmm. You're referring to Solar Edge or Tygo.
Yeah, just if you think about it, right, it's a logical thought process. You have a string inverter and you predominantly use string inverters because of the cost factor against micros, but now you have to add all these individual devices anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we get actually very cost competitive and the value that we bring.
Yeah, the module level power electronics and rapid shutdown is a very dynamic space,
Mhm.
and we're going to see a lot more products and innovation coming. There's different forces at work here, and as I've discussed on the podcast with some of the other manufacturers, is one of the challenges is that you're introducing potentially more points of failure into the solar array.
Mhm.
um, that's a side effect of having module level shutdown.
Right.
And but 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 of course, the NEC is driving this trend, and it's TBD how it will play out. It's going to continue to be an evolution, but for now, I see no reason why the Yotta solar storage inverter combo wouldn't work.
Mhm.
um, until we actually go to market and go to an AHJ and go to a utility for interconnection. We won't truly know.
Mhm.
Uh, and I guess that's where I would encourage you to really get your early adopters on video, doing interviews, doing chase downs of what was it like to install it, how's it working, how did the HJ respond, so that you can nip those in the bud, and break through the FUD.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing, Tim. You pretty much gave away our playbook step by step. Yeah. So
Great.
that's exactly what we have. We have key partners and key markets right now that we're shipping systems to exactly do that. So very exciting. The early feedback is very, very positive, right? I think there's a lot of excitement for what we're building. So
Cool. Well, I'm going to put your website on screen now, and you can please let our listeners know how they can reach you. It's yottaenergy.com is the website. And of course, you will soon have all the details on both the Solar Leaf, which is the storage device, and the microinverter.
correct. Yep. Yep. Yeah. Yottaenergy.com is the best way. And if I can plug in, we are hiring. We have about 5 positions right now that we're currently hiring for. So if you are in the industry and you're listening and you're really excited and you fit one of the backgrounds of our positions, feel free to reach out. Um, we're based here in Austin, Texas. Some of the positions might be remote, but primarily here in Austin, Texas. So, and
Yeah,
Austin is a happening town right now.
I'll give a shout out to the current openings on your website: applications, sales engineer, digital marketing communications, director of sales, director of software engineering, sales executive, solar and storage, senior power electronics engineer. So lots of good opportunities. I think you're, geographically couldn't be in a better place with, Tesla building a gigafactory there.
Yep.
That's just going to be a huge magnet for technical talent. And I mean, it's already a tech hub
Right.
in the Southwest. Hopefully it won't become unlivable like California. That's my only
But
concern
that's
about.
why I was smiling, because I used to joke around and say, that was a way to bring in talent. Say, hey, move to Austin. You can own a 4-bedroom home and a Tesla on a startup salary. That's no longer the case. So home prices have gone up 25, 30% just in the last 6 months. Um,
Yeah.
Thankfully, I mean, there's a lot happening here. So I'm really, thinking about Elon's offer to move to Starbase, which is about 3.5 hours south of here.
Yeah. Yeah. Elon is building a whole city now,
Still the whole city here. So
near Boca Chica.
yeah.
Um, when you say his offer, though, you're saying he's offering companies to move to.
So he put a post out on Twitter saying we need folks to move to Star. I think he's calling the town Starbase now. And so,
Okay. Yeah. Cool.
so the back of my mind, I said, look, if the company wasn't headquartered here and established, it's not a bad place to start a company. Right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, I want to make a few quick announcements before we say goodbye to Omeed. The Solar Podcast is brought to you by Continental Energy Solutions. You can find all of the content that we produce, 2 videos a week, plus a clean power hour at cesnrg.com/podcast. You see here, we're doing a series on reducing the soft cost of solar. We had Mike Casey from TigerCom on. We have thought leaders like Jim Spano, who's doing virtual power plants, DC Lighting with Derek Coburn, Bifacial Tracker with Mark Kingsley from Alliant. So bringing you lots of manufacturers and thought leaders like Erica Myers and the EV Opportunity. So check us out. Please subscribe to the channel on YouTube. Give us a thumbs up. Share it with your friends. And please reach out to me, TG Montague, on Twitter. I love to hear from my listeners and love to hear ideas for other speakers and guests on the show. I want to thank Yotta Energy's CEO, Omeed Badkoobeh, for joining us today. Thank you so much, Omeed.
Thanks, Tim. I really enjoyed the conversation.
I'm Tim Montague. Let's grow solar and storage.